Would you look at the size of that flywheel? So that is off a lorry. It's about 1.5 feet in diameter by the looks of it, and it's in an hell of a state. Welcome back to the channel, guys and girls. I just want to start off by apologising for the last video. Just want you to know that I do read all the comments, and a lot of you commented regarding the ad that I put on. Bit of good news, and we're not going to make a habit of that. At the end of the day, this channel is all about you guys, so you have my full attention this video and for the foreseeable, so I do apologise for that. And also add a little rollicking off a couple of people for sort of welcoming the channel to guys when there is females that watch as well. So it's going to be guys and gals from now on, so I'm sorry about that. But anyway, what we got going on in the workshop at the moment. Before we go any further in the workshop, telling you what we got going on in there. We've got the kit car here. We've got Paul Dove in today, and Paul has kindly put us some new discs and pads on the front of the kit car. So these are slightly bigger discs than before, and so that should help us. We've got some new caliper carriers there, you see on this side over there, so they are nice new discs, so hopefully they're going to help us stop a little bit more. He's done a nut and bolt check everywhere for me, and we are down at Perranporth again on Sunday for another track day. Can't stay away from the place, so hopefully those front brakes are going to help me stop a little bit better. So we set it up on our big lathe and started cutting it. When I clocked it in, it almost looks like the flywheel is slightly concave, so it's almost warped, although for the diameter it isn't very thick, so I expect this has got fairly warm, and it's just warped probably, it's about 30 thou from sort of 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock. Protrudes about 30 thou more than 3 and 9 o'clock. So as you can see by the face, that there is a 1/2 mil. That's 1/2 mil I've took off it now, and you can see with the dark bits in the middle where it hasn't cleaned. So, you know, bar by a new flywheel, they want to face it, so that's fine. But the trouble is, you can see there how wibbly wobbly it is, and that's obviously going to affect the ring gear on the back. Not sure whether you've got the rear main seal housing all built into it, so whether that affects that, I don't know, but that's up to them. But yeah, whopper, that's the biggest diameter one I've had on here. Now, I'm really sorry it's a bit noisy in here. So the same time as the flywheel is cut in, I've got this inlet manifold being refaced. Now this is, I'm not sure what this is off, to be honest with you. Apparently the manifold is, because of the design of it, it's got some heat into the head. They want to put a new head on it, and this has got a bit of a bow in the middle of it. So that is a typical, what I usually say is a Heath Robinson setup. Got to be very careful. Trying to get a decent finish on this is not brilliant, and certainly not easy. So I've done it, set it up the best I can, and I'm just slowly chomping away with 5 thou cuts. So I'm hoping with not too much more, this will clean up and I can get a decent finish on it. Not ideal, but it's the only way really I can think of doing it. So I'm just putting the sump on the Cosworth. As I said yesterday, I got the pump and pickup on and all the rest of it. Now I just want to run you through how I go and put the sump on these. Might sound like a very simple job, which really I suppose it is, but there's just little knacks on putting on some sumps with depending on what the gaskets are like, etc. There's just little techniques that we use. I just thought I'd sort of share that with you, to sort of eliminate any oil leaks really. These things, we never understand really why these things don't just have one sort of solid rubber gasket or something on there, like a lot of modern stuff, but I suppose this was all sort of prior to that. But basically we've got 2 half moon sort of rubbers on the end, which go into a groove on the front cover and also on the rear main cap, and then you've got 2 fibre gaskets either side. Now because this is basically a Pinto setup, the one thing we don't use as far as the gaskets, is the cork gaskets. We don't use them at all. These are a blue fibre gasket. There's no sort of give in them, but there's enough give to sort of eat into any little imperfections either in the sump or in the block face there. So these are the ones that we like using. The rubbers on the end, there is a little technique for both of these. If I start off with this front black one, this is the one that goes in the front sealed carrier. Now if I show you a new one, so this is what they look like, new, and as you can see either side they've got two little sort of what looks like rubber flashing, but it is supposed to be there. The idea of that is to grip into this aluminium housing, in theory. But what tends to happen, because all these are aftermarket now, they're very slightly wider than they should be, and when you press it in there it tends to want to jump out either way. So what we do is we take the flashing right down on one side. So see what I've done on here, took the flashing down on one side, and that allows it to just sit in there, right over the gasket. On these blue gaskets there's two little locators that locate inside there, that sit inside that little groove. So if I take that flashing off, it sits nicely, and then you know that when you put the sump on, it is going to sit where it's meant to sit and not sort of where it wants to go. So that's what we do on that one. The rear one, if I try and find you a rear new one. So here is a rear one. You see it's got two little feet. Again, you've got the locator on the back for the blue gasket to go in either side, and then you've got these little feet that sit down inside the main cap down here. And the idea of that is so where the main cap joins onto the block there, that is to sort of block any oil that wants to escape out of those grooves. But what we tend to do is, you normally find that these aftermarket ones, the feet are first of all too long, so the seal sort of wants to sit too far out of the block, so we trim them down until it pushes down and sits, so that sort of sits flush with the block face, and then we also thin it out slightly there, and then that just allows it to sit down perfectly. And then what we do is we pump a little bit of black silicone down the hole and push it in until the silicone starts to ooze out of the cap there, and then we know that that is nicely sealed. That wants to be sitting in there without any sort of force, nice and flush, and these need to be overlapping the gasket. Then what we do, we just put a bit of black silicone either side, and black silicone on the face of the block here, then we put the gasket on and let that set. Before we put the black silicone on the block face or the sump face, we always brake cleaner it off thoroughly, get that nice and clean. You'd be surprised, although you think it's clean, you'd be surprised what it actually picks up on there. And that allows, obviously, if there's any sort of oil residue on a face, the black silicone will not stick to it. So black silicone's fine as long as everything's brake cleaned thoroughly, and it can stick to the surface. Otherwise you're just peeing in the wind and it's going to leak oil through there. So that's the first thing we do, and then we just repeat. Once all this is on here like this, we just repeat the process on the sump face. So on here, we brake cleaner this off thoroughly, run a brand new razor blade over this, don't use any sort of abrasives, and just make sure that that's free of any proud leftover material or something from the old sump gasket. And we put some black silicone in the corners, not on the seal, in the corners, just a little smear on the gasket, and we plonk that on and get that tightened up. Well, the sump's on, as you can see. That's all looking pretty good. Hopefully that holds the oil in. You see, I checked the piston protrusion yesterday and we're at 12 thou, which is exactly what I like running. So my calculations were right on taking 10 thou of the pistons. So that's all good. See, the pockets are all in. The multi-layer steel Victorine's head gasket, so that's going to go on in a second. We've brake cleaned both surfaces, the head and the block. As you can see here, look, you can see why I like to put the exhaust manifold on before I put the head on, because obviously once you've got the block here, these, although you can do it, these nuts are a right nightmare to get on. So I put that on and that saves doing that job afterwards. Inlet manifold's on, so we're just going to plonk this head on now and get it torqued up. So this Cosworth, we've had a little bit of a move around here, as you can see. That Cosworth was over there. This is the broken cam Cosworth. Got the timing disc on, as you can see. I've timed it up on TDC. As you can see, I've got my new TDC tool here. Thanks very much from James at Auto Dynamics for supplying me with that. I think he must have seen my last video and seen I had a bit of a Heath Robinson setup to try and get TDC, which I've always used. And he said, maybe you should have one of these, and kindly sold me that. So yeah, that makes life a lot easier. So found TDC number one, got my little timing tool on there, my little pointer. So all I've got to do is set these cams up. So if you remember, I've got the BD14 inlet, BD10 exhaust. We had to get a new exhaust anyway because that's the one that was broke. Got our nice Kent vernier pulleys on the end of them there. All we're waiting for now is highly hybrided turbo. Like I said before, this is going to be running about 450, and in a Mark 1 Escort that is more than adequate. Just a few more bits to go back on that. Time it up this afternoon, rocker cover on, and then she's pretty much done and looking a lot more fresh, so you should be happy with that. Right, so that Cosworth's all timed up now, rocker cover's on, so we're just waiting for the turbo. That is looking very nice indeed, if I do say so myself. All stealthy black, he wanted everything black on there, so yeah, chuffed with that. The next Cosworth, the one that was sitting there with the blue rocker cover, the one that I said a video or two back, I'm not quite sure what we're doing with this one yet. So if I just quickly give you the story of this, apparently he said he's had the head off and he's just plonked the head back on quickly. He said, but it's basically giving cracked liner symptoms. He said it's hosing water into the manifolds, pressurising like buggery. So just investigate. He supplied us with a short motor down there. He said basically he wants a good engine out of the two. So I was half expecting to see some disaster with the block. I did ring him up and he said that the block that is with the head at the moment is a short engine that's all been done. We've heard that many a times before, guys. And that block over there is the original short motor, and it had an oil pump failure, I think, or a drive failure, and it starved it of oil and seized up. So they've gone out and bought this that's all been done, and he's put his original head on it with a new gasket, a steel gasket, and this is what's happened. So he suspects that this block was no good. So we've stripped it all down, took the head off. The first thing we did find is the pistons are definitely new, and it has been rebored, although looking at the bores, there's been water sitting in there for some time, so you can feel that, so they are not any good. I've measured them and they're 92 mil, so not 100% sure what make these pistons are yet, but it needs to be bored. We can't go any further, so at the very least, if we were to use this block, it's got to be linered. We've looked at the face, and the block has been faced, and it doesn't look too bad, to be honest, but there doesn't appear to be any cracks in our usual places. So yeah, with a set of liners, that block would probably be okay. Well, it would be okay. The rods all look okay. It's had new ACL bearings. The crank is ground good and proper. 0.5 on the mains, 0.25 on the big ends. But bearing in mind this is a brand new bottom end, so it has been built and it hasn't run, but whoever's done it obviously hasn't cleaned it very well, because you see some of the bearings. These are the mains here, some big old scores in there, so that is not good news. So bear in mind it's only run very briefly. Now I think I found the problem, that's the gasket issue, the pressurising, etc. This is the head, and the head has been put back on with a new gasket, but if you look at the face, you look at areas like this, it looks a little bit, it's definitely been faced in the past, but it is horrible. It looks like it's been used for a football around the workshop for 90 minutes. There's no way I would have put this back on. It's obviously got a big water issue in here because it's all washed out, and these ports were sort of full of water. So I'm suspecting that head face is the problem, or the main problem for them symptoms. But it's lucky really that we did sort of strip it down, because these bearings, you know, with all that crap in there, it wouldn't have lasted very long. We have stripped the other bottom end to see what we got, and why it had seized. So the rods are no good. This one's black as charcoal. It seized up on the big ends. You see the pistons, it's a standard bore, so these are original pistons, mine, but you see there where it's got hot and it's just basically seized up. The bearings, this crank's been ground actually, they're 0.25, so you see the bearings are right down to the copper. It's an absolute nightmare. So not sure of the state of this crank. I'm pretty sure it's going to be bent, although when we took the rods out it did turn okay in there, but not going to risk it with that crank at all. So I think the plan at the moment is, this is the crank that's been ground out of that motor, the one that's all been done. It all does look good. John's just going to measure it, make sure it's dead straight, and can polish up. Then we can use that crank, obviously new bearings. We can use this block. We're going to check the mains are true, and all within size. And this is on a standard bore, so we can go 0.5 on that. New set of pistons. The rods out of that block we can use. And that can give us the short motor. Then we're going to pressure test that head and just make sure it's good, and fingers crossed if it is, we can just go through it and do a usual sort of rebud. It's had a new pump, but I expect there's been crap going around there, so there's no way I'm putting that back in. Yet again, guys, we see the this freshly built motor that's come in here, and I don't know what it is. It's whether it's because we do plenty of Cosworths, but it just seems to be the Cosworth scene. They never seem to do it correctly. You know, all that money, they've obviously bought new pistons, new bearings, rod bolts, all the rest of it. Why not just clean it out properly? There's a few iffy marks on the crank, which I suspect whether the crank's been sitting before they fitted it or what, but I don't know. It just baffles me sometimes. You know, there's been thousands of pounds gone into parts and etc., and then they do that. So yeah, I think the next stage tomorrow, I'm going to get all this lot cleaned up, see what's good, what isn't, what we can use, and go from there really. We had a phone call earlier. We've got another 2 4.2 E-type Jag engines coming in, so that'll be 3 Jag engines we got on the go. Still waiting to hear from our friend with the Jag. He's going to come in Friday and have a chat. I did send him an estimate. He wants to come in Friday morning and have a chat about that and see what his options are. But the way I see it, he hasn't really got any other choice if he wants to keep the car. So yeah, thanks ever so much for watching, guys. Until another one, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you again. Cheers.